And we do have two speakers today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. So we have Mr. Joseph Chapa. Mr. Chapa is the VP of International Affairs and Sister Cities at the Irving-Las Colinas Chamber of Commerce. He heads up the International Trade Development and Assistance Center in Irving, Texas, a joint program with the U.S.-Mexico Chamber, a project which focuses on helping Texas companies undertake trade with Mexico and throughout the world. He also supports projects and initiatives to attract foreign direct investments to Irving and North Texas. Chapa also serves as Vice President for the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce, with responsibility in the area of finance, while also directing the Chamber's chapters in Northeast and Central Mexico, Monterrey, and Guanajuato. Joe is perfectly bilingual in English and Spanish, has a BSBA degree in marketing from Roosevelt University in Chicago, and an MBA Finance from Loyola University in Chicago. Welcome, Mr. Chapa. I'm gonna go ahead and also introduce Mr. Joseph Lopez. Mr. Joseph Lopez serves as manager of Irving International Affairs and Sister Cities for the Greater Irving-Las Colinas Chamber of Commerce, where he supports both the relational and international economic development interests of the city of Irving. He concurrently supports the binational office of the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce and sister organization, the U.S.-Mexico Cultural and Educational Foundation, in programming on both corporate and community engagement efforts. Welcome aboard. Mr. Chapa, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Betty. And thank you, Steve, for the invitation. We're very happy to be here with you to talk a little bit about our chamber and to talk a little bit more specifically in terms of the international affairs and sister cities programs that we have and what it is that we do. We're going to share the discussion, Joe Lopez and I. We're going to cover basically three areas. We're going to do kind of an overview of the whole chamber and economic development and business community. Two, I'm going to talk more specifically in terms of our international affairs and sister cities program, what it is that we do, how we get involved, and the various functional areas that we're involved. And then thirdly, show a few images, some photos of recent and over the last couple of years events and activities, so you get an idea of the kinds of things that we do and where we go and those kinds of things. So again, the overview, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Lopez to provide kind of a chamber overview. And this is a very casual kind of a presentation. We're nothing formal about this. So at any point, and I guess the Q&A will be at the end, but anyway, don't feel that this is a very strict formal presentation. We're just going to kind of talk about the things that we do and what the chamber and the business community here in Irving is from our perspective. So Joe Lopez, I turn it over to you to provide those comments on the overview.
Joe, before you start, let me invite everybody to submit questions to the chat, and then we can collect them and bring them to you.
Perfect, Steve. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to both Betty and Steve for the opportunity to speak with you today. We are going to do as Joe mentioned, Joe Chapa, that is, to share with you a little joke that we have here at the chamber within the city. Your first name has to be Joe to work in international affairs in Irving. So that's something where we've had quite a bit of fun over the last several years. But to give you a background about Irving and Las Colinas, specifically Las Colinas, we are a master planned community, one of the first in the United States, with more than 12,000 acres, which was once the largest mixed-use development in the South. Las Colinas was built around the 125-acre man-made Lake Carolyn, which you can see in some of these photos. If you haven't had the opportunity yet to visit Las Colinas, please do so. And we hope that you can take a walk with, of course, a mask as appropriate or per your comfort along the old world Venetian-style canals lined with walkways, cafes, and entertainment venues. It truly is remarkable and is world-renowned. But more to the point about Irving-Las Colinas and our business community, we have a number of major corporations that call Irving home. As you can see here, we have their recent rankings as well, because these great assets and amenities the city and Las Colinas offers. 8 Fortune 500 and 4 Fortune 1000 companies call Irving-Las Colinas home. Here are the Big 12 with headquarters: ExxonMobil, the largest energy company in the USA; McKesson, the oldest and largest healthcare company in the nation; Kimberly-Clark, a multinational corporation manufacturing personal care products; Fluor, a multinational engineering and construction firm; Vistra Energy, a leader in energy generation; Pioneer Natural Resources, an oil and gas producer; Celanese, a global chemical and specialty materials company; Commercial Metals, a steel and metal manufacturer; Michaels, a retailer of arts and craft supplies; Flowserve, one of the largest suppliers of industrial and environmental machinery; Darling, a global leader in creating sustainable food, feed, and fuel ingredients; and Nexstar Media Group, America's largest local television and media company. What's remarkable about this list of corporate leaders is the diversity of the industries. We believe that this diversity is essential for sustainable growth, and we're very proud of these hallmark corporate leaders, again, that call Irving-Las Colinas home. But that's not all. We are also home to an additional assortment of corporate headquarters. We have over 150 foreign-based companies such as NCH, and then a second NCH, which is an Australian software company. Their first one is in chemical productions. A Japanese-based 7-Eleven, which many of us are familiar with; NEC, a Japanese multinational information technology company. The Irving Economic Development Strategic Plan calls for the recruitment of targeted international markets, and we're leveraging many of these companies to amplify the Irving-Las Colinas story. In Irving-Las Colinas, you can have a local address with global access. The International Affairs and Sister Cities program is working to build relationships around the world to support our international recruitment efforts. Additionally, we have roughly 8,000 small to medium-sized businesses in our city that provide jobs, products, and services, and help us to keep our property taxes among the lowest in the state among cities of similar size. And in this slide, this gives you a nice overview of what makes Irving-Las Colinas specifically a location that's very connected. Irving residents made a major investment in DART that we believe is transforming our city into the city of the future, with 5 Orange Line DART stations, one at North Lake College, the Irving Convention Center, Las Colinas Urban Center, Burbank, and Royal Lane, and one that will soon be open at Hidden Ridge, and one deferred pending the redevelopment of the former Texas Stadium site. The Orange Line will whisk riders to and from DFW International Airport in minutes, and the drive to Dallas Love Field in only 10 minutes away. Irving-Las Colinas highway infrastructure is unmatched. The city and Las Colinas Urban Center is served by 5 major interstate highways and 4 major thoroughfares, including Highway 183, 114, 635, Loop 12, and lastly, the George Bush Turnpike. And at this point, that wraps up my part of the presentation, and I gladly turn this to Joe Chapa to introduce better our international programs here at the Chamber.
Thank you, Joe Lopez. Thank you very much for that overview. And again, I will talk about the international part, but first I'll say the Chamber is a private organization. It's a nonprofit entity. It has members that pay their dues, and it has programs. We get some funding from some of the programs. But in addition to all of that, the Chamber has 2 contracts. The city has contracted the Chamber to do two things. One is to undertake general economic development. That's the recruitment of companies from all over the US to come to Irving. So that's what we call the economic development contract. But the second contract is a contract. The city contracts the Chamber to undertake all international activities. And these are in a couple of areas that I'll talk about a little bit later. But the bottom line and the objective of the international program is to provide positive economic impact to the community of Irving. So that's the basis on which we operate, the contract with the city. It's contract for services. We're not getting money from the city, but rather they're contracting us to conduct some of these services. And I'll get into the specific services a little bit later. Now, the second point on this slide talks about the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce. That is a principal partnership that we have. And just by way of background, I worked for the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce for many years before I came to Irving. But the two chambers undertook a partnership and created an international trade center about 12, 13 years ago when I came on the scene. And that was the basis or the principal part of the international thrust of activities, the International Trade Center. And I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But partnership with the U.S.-Mexico Chamber is important. The U.S.-Mexico Chamber is a binational chamber. It has offices in both Mexico and the U.S. in all of the principal cities, from New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, Dallas, Houston, Seattle, Utah, all over in the U.S. And similarly in Mexico, the big cities in Mexico, Mexico City, Monterrey, Guadalajara, León, Guanajuato, etc. So it's a big infrastructure that we leverage on and we provide. Many of you will probably know that for Texas, Mexico is the biggest trading partner, and the trade with Mexico is greater than the trade with the rest of the world combined. So Mexico is an important country, and the partnership with the U.S.-Mexico Chamber is important to us. Now, the third part of the slide talks about some of the specific programs. Obviously, we have sister cities as part of our name. We have 6 sister cities in the world. 4 of them are in Europe, and you can see them here, the UK, France, Italy, and Finland. One of them is in Asia, in Mongolia. And of course, we have the one in Mexico, in León, Guanajuato, Mexico. And sister cities, some of you may know, some of you may not know that it's a protocol that's been around for many years, since the 50s. It was started by President Eisenhower, whereby a city in one country can reach out and establish a relationship with a city in another country and then undertake whatever exchanges in terms of culture, education, and trade may be appropriate or of interest. And that's all that it is. And we use, of course, this relationship and this framework to undertake some of the other trade and commerce activities that we do. So again, Sister Cities is one of the important parts of the program. We do international recruitment and retention, which means Joe mentioned that we have about 150 foreign companies that have operations in Irving. We want to keep those 150. We want to add to that. So we do some recruiting of companies from various countries in the world. And then I mentioned the International Trade Development Assistance Center. This center basically exists to provide support to the Irving community, individuals, businessmen, and companies in terms of what they want to do internationally or to enhance what they're already doing internationally. By the same token, to bring in companies from other parts of the world to do matchmaking and activities with companies here in Irving. And then the last item on here is international protocol services. You know, what this is very simply is that we do, on behalf of the city of Irving and the Mayor Rick Stouffer, we are the liaison that provides services on all government officials that visit Irving. I mean, and at some points, and I'll talk about some of the recent visits, but we get visits from all parts of the world, from Europe, Asia, and Latin America. And we kind of provide that assistance to the mayor's office to coordinate, to organize, and to help with those. On the next slide, Joe, I think it's what I just talked about. On a functional basis, I mentioned 4 areas: recruitment and retention, the trade center, Irving Sister Cities, and of course, the protocol services. So these are the 4 areas that we get involved in. So now I mentioned the sister cities. The top column here, flags, are the flags of the 6 countries where we have where we have sister cities, formal sister cities relationships at the moment. But we are looking to expand. We are looking at the various other countries. We've had discussions with China, with Panama, with Nepal, Tanzania, various countries. And, you know, it's not a matter of us adding another 6 or 8 or 10 sister cities. We are looking to make sure that whatever city we look at, and it's a long process. It usually takes 1 to 2 years to establish a relationship. But that relationship has to make sense. There has to be some affinity or complementary advantage to the relationship in terms of trade, exchanges, culture, education, etc. So those are the sister cities and the work that we do in that respect. And I mentioned the U.S.-Mexico Chamber as a partner, and we have probably 14, 15, 16 partnerships. We have a limited budget, and we work very hard to make sure that the city's funding of this program goes a long way. And one of the ways that we do this through is some of the partnerships that we have. We have partnerships with for example, some of the ethnic chambers, what used to be the French American Chamber, now the European Chamber, the Asian Chamber, the U.S.-Mexico Chamber, the Nepalese Chamber, various chambers where our relationship with these organizations helps in the communication, whether it's a sister city or a business venture that we want to communicate with in terms of the various countries. A most recent MOU or cooperative agreement that we signed with an organization called Pro-Panama. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Pro-Panama is the export and trade organization, international trade organization for the country of Panama. Anyway, okay, so that's enough of that. Joe, on the next slide, I mentioned that we work with various parts of the world. The image on the left is an image taken of the delegation that visited us a couple of years ago from Nepal. And here in this photo, we are with a couple of dignitaries, including Mayor Rick Stouffer on the left and Commissioner Dr. Elba Garcia in the center at an event. The visit was for about 2 weeks, and among other things, they were looking for best practices in terms of how the city of Irving is run and what they could take back to Nepal and use in terms of the municipality governments and how they operate in Nepal. The right image is an image of an event that took place where, and Joe Lopez is there, with the Consul General of India out of Houston celebrating the I got my picture out of sequence here, but that's a celebration, Joe, of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. So, okay, on the next slide. I mentioned the U.S.-Mexico Chamber. The image on the left is an image of former Ambassador Marta Bárcena, ambassador from Mexico to Washington, at the annual gala, Good Neighbor Awards Gala that the U.S.-Mexico Chamber does in Washington every year. This is done at the Organization of American States, a very impressive building in Washington. And it's a very large dinner with various participants and awards that are given to the private sector and the public sector for both countries. And of course, the ambassador of Mexico to the U.S., as well as the ambassador from the U.S. to Mexico, they function as honorary presidents of the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce. Now, the image on the right is a very recent activity, Day of the Dead here in Irving, in Las Colinas, on the canal. In the images on the right is General Al Zapanta, who's a councilman and who's also president of the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce. And then the gentleman on the left is, of course, Mayor Rick Stouffer, and the First Lady is in the center, Melanie. Okay, the next. We have a lot of partners. One of the partners that I didn't mention, but that we do have is the Japan-America Society. And we, in fact, I happen to sit on the board of the Japan-America Society. We share a lot of activities and events with them. This photo is a recent event that we were with them, and Councilman Kyle Taylor from the city of Irving is there in the photo, as well as the Honorary Consul of Japan in Dallas, Dr. Shishijo. And the picture on the right, I mentioned Panama. And last year, we had the visit of a delegation led by President Cortizo of Panama. And there is President Cortizo shaking hands with our Mayor Rick Stouffer on the signing of the cooperative agreement that we did with Pro-Panama. And it's a cooperative agreement to just take advantage of the relationship and share in terms of business interests both ways, business as well as cultural. And we are looking at a potential sister city in Panama, of course. Recent events. The photo on the left is a Qatar delegation. It's a reception of a Qatar delegation that was here recently. In fact, I guess it was last month. And we are there. The representative in the center is from the Foreign Ministry of Qatar. And of course, next to him, to our right, to his left, is Wal Salama, who's chairman of our International Affairs Committee. Of course, Joe Lopez and I are there. Mr. Lawrence Howarth from Richardson is there. And the photo on the right is also very recent. And it is of the two representatives, one from Texas and one from the Tokyo municipal government, an MOU, a cooperative agreement was just signed between Texas and the Tokyo government to cooperate on small business initiatives. And there are about 18 communities in Texas that are participating. Irving is one of them. So this is a photo of when the agreement was just signed. Again, recent, over the last 2 weeks, we had delegations visiting us from the Ukraine. As a matter of fact, they were here for on a program that is part of called the Congressional Office of International Leadership Open Worlds Program, organized through one of the local Rotaries. In fact, the Rotary Club that Joe Lopez participates in. And this is at a lunch that we hosted for them at the local restaurant, the Venetian Terrace here in Las Colinas, with participation from the North Texas Commission. Mr. Chris Wallace is in the background, president of the North Texas Commission. And the photo on the right, also within the last 2 weeks, is the Honorable Alexander Nikolov. He is the Minister of Energy from the government of Bulgaria. He led a delegation that had a forum on energy and met with a number of companies, but we hosted the event here at the chamber in our vault facility, and a very good event. And again, a very recent visit here just in the last 2 weeks. Now, over the last couple of years, we do trade missions. These photos are of a recent trade mission a couple of years ago that Governor Greg Abbott led to Japan. We visited a number of cities in Japan, including Tokyo and Nagoya. The photo on the left is at what is called Toyota City. And a large delegation. The photo on the right is I was invited to a very more exclusive private meeting between the governor and one of the Japanese companies, Oki, who has an operation here in Irving, Oki Data. Again, working with Japan, we did another recent event. This one was last year in July, and we had a roundtable, U.S.-Japan Business Roundtable. And the representatives sitting at the table include the CEO of NEC, Mark Ikeno, and then the representative on the right is from NTT Data. Of course, Sam Reed is on the left. He was our chairman of the chamber at the time. And on the screen in the background is Mr. Hiroyuki Watanabe, who is a consultant of ours for the chamber and works in Tokyo and heads up the Texas Japan office in Tokyo and helped us in terms of introductions and whatever logistical help and support we need when we go to Japan. The photo on the right is another more cultural activity that we participated in, and Joe Lopez did most of the work on this one, Olympic Day Irving-Las Colinas. To coincide with the Olympics, we did an Olympic Day event here, and we had, I think, over 2,000 participants in a number of activities, including recreational and sports and races, 5K, 10K, 1K. There was boxing. There was, what else, Joe? There were about 12
tournaments, yes.
Tournaments, soccer demonstrations. A very successful event for the community, though hampered a bit by the pandemic. It still had great participation, and we look forward to having one of these again at some point, the next Olympics. Other cultural events include, on the left is a photo of the dragon boat race, a dragon boat race during the Dragon Boat Festival here in Lake Carolyn in Las Colinas. It is done every year. Of course, during the pandemic, it was not held. So this photo is from a couple of years ago. It will be held again this year in the October timeframe. And the chamber always races at least one boat. We used to do 2 boats, but if we can get enough interest, we will do 2 boats again. There are about 50 teams that vie for various prizes in half a dozen categories. Usually we have a mixed team, so we have men and women that race. The photo on the right is a recent visit I made to Korea on a trade mission. I'm there with Dr. Nam in the city of Busan, Korea, enjoying a very nice Korean lunch. Again, I mentioned the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce, our dear partner. These photos are, the U.S.-Mexico Chamber has a sister organization called the U.S.-Mexico Cultural and Educational Foundation. And that foundation, for many years, I think for the last 6 for 7 presidential elections in Mexico, has led an official observer's mission to Mexico. And this is the last presidential election in Mexico in 2018. And we from the Irving Chamber, including Beth Bowman, our president and CEO, was with us while we toured various places in and around Mexico City and the outskirts to go to polling places. The photo on the right is one of these polling places. A very successful event. And the next slide, which I think is my last slide, Joe, is just, again, Joe showed slides that had the logos of a lot of the companies, Irving being headquarters of headquarters. These logos are European, Asian, and Latin American companies that are among the 150 foreign companies that have operations here in Irving. The 3 logos on the bottom are the last 3 companies that have come to Irving to establish Irving as their headquarters. Union Bank is a Japanese bank. Ito-En is the largest green tea manufacturer out of Japan, and they moved their headquarters from New York. After having been in New York for more than 20 years, they moved, and they are now in Irving as their headquarters for North America. USTO Shop is a small Chinese marketplace company, and Unrobot is a Danish company. So again, this is just a sample of some of the 150 companies, foreign companies that we have here in Irving.